For centuries, the Iberian Peninsula was a land of two worlds. To the north, Christian kingdoms pushed relentlessly southward. To the south, the rich Islamic civilization of Al-Andalus resisted, a beacon of culture and science. As the final act of this centuries-long struggle unfolded, the last Muslim emirate, Granada, stood on the brink of collapse. The Spanish kingdoms of Castile and Aragon prepared for the final siege, a moment that would reshape history. But across the border, another Christian kingdom, Portugal, watched. Its role in this monumental event is shrouded in myth and mystery. Was Portugal a partner in the Fall of Al-Andalus? A silent ally in a holy war, or was its story entirely different? To find the answer, we must journey back through time to an age of iron, faith, and ambition, where two kingdoms born from the same conflict would ultimately choose to very different destinies. The story of the Reconquista often paints a simple picture, a unified Christian front driving Islam from Iberia, but reality was far more complex. From the misty mountains of Asturias, Christian warlords began clawing back territory. Over centuries, these small realms grew, warring not just with their Muslim neighbors, but also amongst themselves. Eventually, two dominant powers emerged in what we now call Spain, the Kingdom of Castile, a land-hungry giant, and the Crown of Aragon, a maritime power looking to the Mediterranean. They led the great southward push, capturing legendary cities like Toledo, Córdoba, and Seville. But on the western edge of the peninsula, another story was unfolding. The county of Portugal, once a vassal of the Kingdom of Leon, fought for its own identity. It battled its Christian neighbors as fiercely as it did the Muslim taifas to its south. Portugal was carving out its own space, driven by its own goals. This wasn't a united front. It was a peninsula of rivals, each with a crown to win and a legacy to build. The idea of a shared Spanish identity was still centuries away. So, where was Portugal while the great battles of the Reconquista raged across central Iberia? The answer lies in its geography. Portugal's focus was not on the heartland of Al-Andalus, but on securing its own territory along the Atlantic coast. Its wars were fought to conquer cities like Lisbon and to push its southern border to the Algarve. A defining moment came in 1143 with the Treaty of Zamora. With the Pope's blessing, Portugal was officially recognized as an independent kingdom. This diplomatic victory was crucial. It meant Portugal no longer had to look over its shoulder at its powerful Christian neighbors in Spain. It was free to chart its own course, and that course soon led it away from Iberia altogether. While Castile and Aragon remained fixated on Granada, the last remnant of Al-Andalus, Portugal's ambitions turned south across the sea. Its knights and armies were not marching on Granada. They were storming the fortress city of Ceuta in North Africa in 1415. They fought for control of Tangier and other coastal strongholds in Morocco. For Portugal, the enemy was the same, but the battlefield was different. Its war was a war for trade routes and maritime control, a foreshadowing of the global empire it was destined to become. By the late 1400s, the stage was set for the final act. The Emirate of Granada stood alone, a fragile survivor surrounded by the might of a newly united Spain under Queen Isabella of Castile and King Ferdinand of Aragon. They were determined to complete the Reconquista and erase the last vestige of Islamic rule from the peninsula. They gathered a massive army, leveraging all their resources for one final, decisive campaign. So, did they call upon their Portuguese neighbors for aid? Did Portugal send troops, money, or supplies to help in this holy cause? The historical record is clear. No, Portugal did not participate in the war for Granada. Why not? The reasons were deeply political. Far from being partners, Portugal and Spain were intense rivals. They had just fought a war over the Castilian throne. Tensions simmered over border disputes and competing claims to new discoveries across the ocean. For For the Portuguese crown, a powerful, unified Spain on its border was not a comfort, it was a threat. Helping Spain conquer Granada would only strengthen a potential adversary. So, while Ferdinand and Isabella laid siege to the city's magnificent walls, Portugal remained a spectator, its gaze fixed firmly on the open seas. But does this mean Portugal was a tolerant haven, untouched by the religious fervor sweeping Spain? Not at all. While Portugal did not partner with Spain against Granada, it ran a parallel policy of religious persecution within its own borders. Following Spain's lead after 1492, Portugal eventually forced its own Jewish and Muslim populations to convert to Christianity or face expulsion. The pressure from the Church and the Spanish Inquisition was immense, and the Portuguese monarchy, seeking to maintain alliances and its own Catholic identity, complied. These were brutal, intolerant policies that mirrored those happening in Spain. However, the key distinction is that they were independent. There was no joint strategy, no coordinated plan between the two kingdoms. Lisbon was not taking orders from Madrid. Portugal's persecution of its minorities was driven by its own internal politics and its relationship with Rome, not by a partnership with Spain. This was a story of parallel actions, not a shared enterprise. Two separate kingdoms wrestling with the same religious and political demons, but doing so on their own terms. So, where did the myth of a united Iberian crusade come from? For centuries, historians, often with a nationalist or religious agenda, sought to create a simple, heroic narrative. They depicted the Reconquista as a single, glorious 700-year war waged by a unified Christian Spain against a monolithic Moorish enemy. In this telling, Portugal's role was often minimized or simply absorbed into the larger Spanish story. It was convenient to imagine all the Christian kingdoms of Iberia marching shoulder to shoulder, united under one holy banner. But the truth, found in medieval chronicles, royal letters, and treaties, tells a different story. These documents reveal a landscape of constant rivalry. We see Portugal and Castile signing treaties against each other. We find evidence of border skirmishes and diplomatic standoffs. The idea that they would seamlessly join forces for the final battle against Granada simply doesn't hold up. Portugal consistently acted in its own self-interest, prioritizing its independence and its own strategic goals above any notion of Iberian unity. The grand, unified crusade is a powerful myth, but it remains just that, a myth. While Spain invested its blood and treasure in the final conquest on land, Portugal was pouring its resources into a revolutionary new venture. It wasn't building armies to march east, it was building ships to sail south. Freed from the continental struggles that bogged down Spain, Portugal became the pioneer of the Age of Discovery. Its skilled mariners, backed by the crown, developed the caravel vessel capable of mastering the treacherous Atlantic. They charted the unknown coast of Africa, seeking gold, spices, and a direct sea route to the riches of India. This monumental effort redirected the nation's entire energy. The ambition of Portuguese knights was no longer to win land in Iberia, but to win glory and wealth on distant shores. Naval expeditions replaced land wars. The focus shifted from the arid plains of Andalusia to the vast, blue expanse of the ocean. This divergence is the single most important reason why Portugal stood apart from the fall of Granada. It was already engaged in a new kind of conquest, one that would make it the world's first global empire. So we return to our question: was Portugal a partner in the Fall of Al-Andalus? The answer is a clear no. While Spain's destiny culminated in the siege of Granada, ending 7 centuries of Islamic presence, Portugal's destiny was found on the waves. The Fall of Al-Andalus was, in the end, Spain's endeavor alone. Driven by rivalry and a bold new vision of a maritime empire, Portugal played its own game. Its path was not defined by the conquest of its neighbors, but by the discovery of new worlds. It was a story of two kingdoms forged in the same fire, but who chose to walk to very different paths. one driven by the siege, the other by the sea. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more hidden histories.